Guys, welcome to the longest frog radio ever. This one's clocking in at 1 hour and 22 minutes 56 seconds. Frog Radio, Sunday the 17th of June 2018. This is my visit to the Australian War Memorial, the museum section, the aircraft hall, having a look at some excerpts from the upcoming video that you'll see if you watch all the way through, including such gems as the ME-262 and the Messerschmitt ME-163 Comet. Stay tuned for those. In this edition of Frog Radio, I'm going to go through the following: buying a house, which I'm currently doing at this time, Bodenplatte update, which is coming up in the next minute or two, including screenshots from the latest developer blog. I'll cover the Mustang that I'm working on, my artwork essentially, in t-shirt and other garment format, which you can find on my website, in the format of hoodies, sweaters, t-shirts, sweatshirts, long sleeve t-shirts, that sort of thing. Get them today, support the channel. And gun cam footage. What you're seeing right now is some footage of the Australian War Memorial, and these are just some excerpts of my wandering around there today, having a look at all the wonderful aircraft in the aircraft hall, and also looking at some other aspects of the War Memorial Museum to do with World War I trench combat. Stay tuned for that in about 2 minutes. So let's have a look at the Bodenplatte update. You're looking at a MiG-15 engine there, by the way. Let's look at the Bodenplatte update. This is really exciting. This is, what is this? This is the Focke-Wulf FW190A8, or is it the Dora? I think it's the A8. So it looks like a radial, but actually it's an inline engine. I think it's a Junkers Umo, something along those lines. Obviously it's just the shape, no skin, and no flight model, but it's looking extremely amazing. I'm really impressed by how it looks. And there's also the P-47D Thunderbolt with the bubble canopy, which is right there with its cow flaps extended, and that massive propeller being driven by an engine with how many horsepower? Something like 2,000 plus horsepower, 2,400 horsepower or something, and 8 50 caliber machine guns in the wings there. This thing was a real beast. Apparently it was a high altitude machine more than a low altitude machine. It was not naturally aspirated. I'm going by intuition here, but I think it was more than a single row radial. I think it was a double row radial, probably an engine by Wright, a radial engine by Wright or something like that, and not naturally aspirated. Very powerful engine, even producing a lot of power at altitude, at the altitude that the B-17s flew at. This was the original escort fighter before the P-51 came in. It was the one that had significant range, that it could fly well into Germany and back again on one tank of fuel plus drop tanks. So this is for the up and coming IL-2 Sturmovik Battle of Bodenplatte. I'm extremely excited about this, and I think I'm not alone in that sentiment. It's going to be awesome. And here's this one. Is it a Dora or an A8? I think it's an FW190 A8. Quite a bit of armament there, the cannons and such. Again, going by intuition, I'm going to say it's got on the top of the cow flap, on the top of the nose cowling there, 2 MG131s, 13mm, roughly 50 caliber, but greater than 50. 50 is 12.7 mil. Those are 13mm machine guns, I believe. And in the wing roots, I think those are MG151-20s. So later on, I think they adapted that one to use the Mark 108 30mm cannon. So that's the Bodenplatte update. Super exciting. Super exciting. This is my website. These are my videos and my artworks in garment format. Not just relegated to t-shirts these days, expanded sweatshirts, long sleeve t-shirts, standard t-shirts, premium t-shirts, and hoodies. I'm really wanting to get a sweatshirt, jumper as we call it in Australia, in the Anglosphere, a jumper or a sweatshirt. I'm really wanting to get a sweatshirt, and I'm going to have to find a way to rustle one up, because at the moment you can only buy them from if you're located within, if your postal address is located within the United States. I'm so in love with my own t-shirts and sweatshirts and that I think I'm gonna get one. I'll have to use a resender to purchase it for me from the United States and then send it to me here in Australia. Let me just look at that, and one of the major questions is, what colour do you want? So there's this grey colour, there's black, there's a few standard colours basically that you can select. When you put it all together, you can select about 5 different colours and or less, and I've always gone for the maximum amount of colours available, and there they are. That's a good one. I mean, they're all good. That's also good, and I think that's royal blue. They're all fantastic. All of them would be good. At the moment I've only got the aircraft image on the back of a hoodie. In the future I'll have it on the front of the hoodie as well. For the rest of the garments, you can get the aircraft image mostly on the front, sometimes on the back as well. And that's a compendium of all my designs thus far. The Mustang itself is my first design, and it's evolving. You can't see it in this particular image, but the latest version of the Mustang has the invasion stripes, the black and white invasion stripes, which were added to Allied aircraft at and subsequent to the D-Day landings in continental Europe, Fortress Europe. And the reason why they had those black and white stripes apparently is for easy recognition, so that there weren't blue on blue friendly fire incidents, because you'd be bearing down on a target and you'd see those black and white stripes and you'd go, oh, hang on, that's one of ours, and you'd pull off and you wouldn't shoot them down. That same goes for the ground forces. If they saw the black and white stripes, they wouldn't shoot. So how fantastic is that, eh? You just got to choose your colour, and you get a t-shirt or a sweatshirt with a Mustang on it. Various different variations of the Mustang. This one's just sporting the USAAF livery, and then, as I say, the latest one also has the Invasion black and white stripes, which is my latest design, and I'm immensely proud of it because I put it together myself. And as an artist, I do consider myself an artist. It's immensely rewarding to see a project like this come together so well. And I legit want to get one of these for myself. On sizing, they only go up to 2XL. I myself, I'm 6'3.5". I'm very tall. And I'm very glad to say that I've looked at the sizing chart that's available here, and the 2XL is more than enough. I got out the tape measure and I measured myself, and in inches, the 2XL is more than enough to fit me. It's like a supersized jumper. I encourage you to buy today, support myself and the channel, and get yourself a great garment with an original Froggy Frog 9000 artwork. So moving on, this is the Australian War Memorial. This is the World War I trench section. I wanted to include this one, and before we got onto the aircraft, in the aircraft hall, and I'll look at these pictures in more detail. But essentially, you're looking at the kind of the horror and the barbarism. I mean, true horror. Just look at that. I've always been fascinated by it, but my God, this is that was chemical and gas warfare, which is now banned by the Geneva Convention as a result of the Allies and Axis experience in World War I, with things like chlorine gas, mustard gas, and these are fairly tame by modern standards. There's even a thing there for a dog or a horse to have a gas mask to have some chance of survival. There's an Allied breathing apparatus, and there's the old German spiked helmet. This would have been from, I don't know, 1916 or something. There's an old pistol. What is it, a Browning or something? Look at that one. That's ancient. I think that's actually Turkish. I wanted to let's have a look at some longer shots of these pictures. I wanted to include these. These are armour. They're obviously for front line, very, very front line machine gunners. And there's legit armour there, actual armour. And in addition to the standard Fritz helmet that the Germans brought in after the spiked helmet during World War I, and it was a bit bigger than the World War II pattern Fritz helmet. But look at it, it's got an appendage added to it. It's got an extra kind of a sleeve jacket thing attached to it, which is very thick armour that fits over the helmet and kind of plugs into it. You can see it right there in front of you there. In addition to it looks like something out of the Middle Ages, doesn't it? The knight in shining armour. And what's that thing on the top left there? Is that a knee pad or something, or a shoulder pad? And check this one out. It's a I guess you've got all your body covered, except what about your face? So you wear this kind of Phantom of the Opera Arabian-esque kind of veil kind of thing made out of chainmail with the Phantom of the Opera thing there. And even the eyes are protected by plate steel. Plate mild steel. I don't know if this is an official armour that was issued officially, or if they just put it together out of desperation. But can you imagine the need for these things, even having the eyes covered with these slits of mild steel? You can imagine the guy wearing this on the front line. He's getting peppered literally with shrapnel, probably during his whole 12-hour shift, 2 weeks at a time, constant bombardment non-stop, no matter whether it's night or day, and he's out there and he's wearing this thing and he's getting hit by pieces of shrapnel and mud travelling at 700 metres a second, and the sonic shock and the pressure wave and all this kind of thing. And there's a better shot of the armour that goes on the helmet, on the Fritz helmet. Isn't that amazing? So obviously the Fritz helmet is definitely not enough to stop shrapnel. You'd get brained by a piece of shrapnel. So they stuck that extra armour there. This is actually at the end of my tour of the museum, and I'm just putting it at the front of this video. Just, I don't know why, but it's quite interesting. This is obviously not the aviation section. This is just the general museum area. There's a pipe here, and there's some amulets. What's in there? Is that morphine or something? I could be totally off base. And why is there morphine with a pipe? Did they get you to smoke the morphine? I don't know. And these are old school dioramas, and they're actually 10 out of 10, high quality, excellent, very, very excellent at depicting the muddy, churned up World War I battlefield in France. There's some rifles, I think they're Lee Enfields. And here's this display, this wonderful display of the armour and the fighting implements. They even had knuckle dusters, and knuckle dusters with knives attached, or vice versa. There's a sniper rifle, looks like a K98. A K98. Some grenades, a diorama depicting the shrapnel explosive pattern of a small shell, a Lewis gun or a Maxim. There's a barbed wire cutter on the front of that Lee Enfield. There's a grenade launcher, and there's the armour, the medieval looking frontline shrapnel resistant armour. I mean, imagine copping a 7.92mm Mauser round in the face. You'd want to have some of that steel armour there. So this is at the beginning of my trip to the museum. This is a Mosquito, and I'm looking up at the Mosquito. The museum is decked out architecturally quite well. There's platforms that you can walk up on, and so I'm looking up at the aircraft there, and you can walk up a platform and then sort of be on the same level as them.
Here at Laverton, cadets are instructed in the varied duties essential to keep every plane in perfect condition all the time. The Royal Australian Air Force is still a youthful unit, but it is characterized by meticulous efficiency.
So that looks like the cockpit of an Avro Anson to me, and that's a bit of historical video footage there. I really get the impression from visiting this aircraft hall just how important, how front and centre the Merlin engine was to any Australian involvement in World War II. There's a Mitsubishi A6M0, graceful, and it has that aesthetic common to all Japanese manifestations of Japanese culture. I don't know what, it's a je ne sais quoi. It's a kind of a beauty or a gracefulness. The Zero has it for sure. I don't know how to describe it exactly. But as far as radial engine aircraft go, the Zero is a beautiful aircraft in my opinion. And here we are underneath the belly, looking at the belly and the wings. And it's very dark in this museum. That's my one criticism of it. But I'm looking at the radial engine. I assume it's of an A6M. It's got bent propellers. And panning across to the right, there's an Australian live-reared Kitty Hawk, which we'll visit in due course as well. Isn't it amazing that manufacturers like Mitsubishi still exist today, and you can just go down to the car yard and buy yourself a Mitsubishi ASX or something, and it's one and the same of the company that made this fabulous Warbird. That blows my mind. Same with Kawasaki, Mercedes, BMW, you name it. Rheinmetall. This video, as I say, is an hour and 22 minutes long. I may have over-footaged it, but to those like me that are quite interested in aviation, this perhaps won't be too long. Who knows? I'll do my best to keep it entertaining. So as I alluded to at the beginning of the video, I'm currently in the process of potentially buying a house. I've put in an offer. The offer's been accepted. My offer, however, was extremely low. So it's quite likely that I'll be outbid by a usurper that comes along and offers a higher amount. If that's the case, even though my offer's been accepted, I might still lose the house. It's a house in the country. It's completely dilapidated and run down. It's a dump. Built in the 1940s. The block of land was gazetted or whatever in 1926, and apparently the house was built in the 1940s. So it's as old as these aircraft that you see here, but in much worse condition. Literally falling down in some parts, and smells like there's been a lot of pet cats in there at one stage. Just look at that phenomena on the screen there. I actually saw that as I was filming it through the camera's viewfinder. I don't know what it is, but any of the boffins out there can tell us what that purple strobe is. The purple lines. I figure it must be some effect of the lighting that the camera was picking up, because obviously I couldn't see it in real life, but I could see it through the camera's viewfinder. Looking at a Mustang there in Australian livery. Note that there's no camouflage, just bare aluminium. So at this stage of the war they were not really needing to camouflage their planes. They were looking for trouble, looking for the enemy, trying to attract the enemy, trying to be as visible to the enemy as possible. Hey, come up and fight, we're bored, says the bare aluminium. And there's the Merlin engine of the Mosquito. So the Mosquito has a Merlin engine, the Mustang has a Merlin engine, Spitfires had Merlin engines, which Australia used extensively, although we don't have one in the museum. Same, the Hurricane used a Merlin, and there's a MiG-15, and the Avro Lancaster, if I'm not very much mistaken, also used the Merlin. So the Merlin is a very heavily featured aircraft engine in this aircraft hall of the Australian War Memorial. There's some rockets on the wing of the Mustang. There's a Merlin engine in the front of the Mustang. So yeah, it really struck me, it really hit home just how prevalent and widespread and found everywhere was the Merlin. The Rolls-Royce Merlin. What do we got here? Is this a Hawker Sea Fury? Or a Tempest? No, it's a Sea Fury, isn't it? I've seen one of these fly, or something very similar in real life, and man, they are fast. In any direction, be it straight and level or straight up, they are fast, incredibly powerful. And I was captivated by the Stein down there. I think it says, what does it say? Doug. I think this was Korean War era. 77 Fighter Squadron. I think at one stage it was P-51s versus MiG-15s. Fuck that. P-51's good, but bloody hell, going up against a jet, that'd be scary. I don't know why they put the MiG-15 in that capsule there that's underneath the P-51. You can hardly see the 15. It's so obscured by the box that it's in. It's a bit disappointing. But so the only real criticism I have of this museum is that it's too dark. Particularly when I was trying to behold the ME-163 and the ME-262. They're tucked away in the corner in this kind of box. And the lights were off in the box. And it's already dark, and then when they turn the lights off in the corner, you can imagine it's just incredibly dark. So I couldn't really see what I was looking at. I don't think the camera would have picked up the aircraft too well, particularly at their tailplane sections. Does this plane have an ejector seat? I don't know. It kind of looks like it might. It's a huge plane, and then you see the pilot in there, tiny little cockpit, and a tiny human being in this gigantic plane, and this was a fighter plane. So at this stage of the war, at the end of the war, fighters were just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. This one probably could carry a bomb load comparable to heavy bombers of the beginning of the war, even though this one is a fighter, not a bomber. It's that kind of progression of technology. I mean, if you look at an F-15 Eagle and you compare it to the bomb load of a B-17, an F-15 Eagle can carry a greater bomb load than a B-17G heavy bomber. That blows my mind. And it can, and it can do it at Mark II all day long. I believe you are limited in your top speed with propeller planes by problems with critical Mach number on the propeller. From what I have learnt previously, I think propellers get extremely inefficient as they get close to the outer sort of zones of the speed of sound. Like when you get to, I don't know what, Mach 0.7 or something in a propeller plane, the propeller just loses its efficiency, and you'd need exponentially more power to get minuscule increases in airspeed, something along those lines. So in that sense, it's not the lack of power, it's the kind of, I would call it a fact that propellers are not compatible with transonic speed flight. But up to anything about probably just under 800 kilometers an hour, propeller planes can operate in that realm, which is where the P-51 Mustang and the Hawker Sea Fury operated. What was the top speed of these planes? I think the Sea Fury was even faster than the Mustang, and the Mustang could do, what, 750 kilometers an hour? 400 miles per hour? Very fast planes. Just drinking my coffee. And here we have, I believe this is a Wirraway. Very Australiana sounding name for a plane, Wirraway. From the CAC, the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation, that also produced the Boomerang. And I think the Boomerang was actually a pretty good plane. Like it wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't incompetent. And the Wirraway, what was it? Was it a trainer or a fighter bomber or something? I think it was everything all at once. I think Australia decided in World War II they're going to build their own plane. And look at it, it's not a monocoque fuselage, it's a steel tube fuselage. Which surprises me. I thought they would have gone for a monocoque configuration rather than steel tube. Steel tube's easier. Monocoque is more modern. And there's the nose art. That's a really amazing nose art. Hope you're enjoying this here tour of the Australian War Memorial Aircraft Hall. And now I've locked on to the Kitty Hawk from a different angle here. You can see lighting is a challenge. I think whoever's the director of the aircraft hall has decided to turn the lights off essentially to make it more atmospheric, which is great, but there's a serial number underneath this tail, and in a minute you can see I'm trying my damnedest to try and see what it is. I can see A2 there, but in the shadow of the tailplane there you can't see the rest of it. It's too bloody dark. It's too dark. So yes, the darkness makes it kind of somber and atmospheric, and puts one in a state of suggestion, which allows one to kind of fully absorb the history. And there's that purple strobe again. I don't know what that is. I don't know what the camera's picking up there. Is it a laser or something? I don't know. So I think it suffices to say that the lighting is subpar for filming purposes. And this was today, Sunday. This is on a Sunday. You've got retirees, I think, going through, giving guided tours every now and then. And I was lucky to catch a automated display of the Lancaster while I was in there, which was not too bad at all. And that's actually on camera coming up in, I don't know when, 10 minutes or something. So the P40 here's got the nose art there, poly, and it's a pretty cool plane. 350 cows. What engine did it have? Was it an Allison or a Packard or something? And there's the Zero from another angle. And it wasn't really that busy. I could get a park easily. It's free. It's free. If you're in Australia, if you're in Canberra, it's free. No need to pay for parking. This was on a Sunday. I could get a park in the underground park, and parking was free, and entry to the War Memorial and the Aircraft Hall was free. Can't get better than that. So this is an early war aircraft pretty much, and you can see it's in camouflage. Interestingly, compare and contrast it to the Mustang. The Mustang, they didn't even bother putting camouflage on it. They still put the RAAF roundel on the Mustang to denote the country's insignia, but they didn't bother to put camo on it, whereas this one, it's got the full-on camo. This is from the stage when we could have actually lost the war to the Japanese, and we were going all out to try our hardest to win. And towards the end, we were looking for a fight. There were just no Japanese planes left, and we'd just fly out with Mustangs with no paint on them, glinting in the sun with their shiny aluminium structures, flying low, flying high. looking anywhere for some action, and with massive numerical superiority. I tried to get a look in the cockpit. Man, I wish I could climb up on this Kitty Hawk and pull back that canopy and just jump in and fly away. Wouldn't that be nice? So there's some data on Polly. (1942), hastily assembled and sent north. So I guess these planes arrived in crates from America. We put them together and then send them to Darwin or what have you, or send them up to Malaysia or New Guinea. There was an Australian fighter ace called Bluey Truscott, who was an AFL, that's Australian Football League, AFL player. So he played football in Australia, in Melbourne. Bluey Truscott, so he was an athlete, and then he became a fighter pilot and a bit of a leader, and became an ace. And he used to lead his squadron on attacks on the beaches around Malaya and New Guinea, I think, on invading Japanese. And they'd fired their 50 cals so much that the rifling in the 50 cals disappeared, and they didn't have any replacement barrels. And they were firing their 50 cals at the beach, smooth bore, but it didn't matter. They didn't need massive accuracy to throw lead shells at targets on the beach. That gave you an idea of the desperation in the early war years. Shooting a gun without rifling in the barrel, doesn't matter, just get out there and blast away. So that was Bluey Truscott, who flew the P-40 Kitty Hawk. This is another look from a different perspective at the Mosquito. Apparently there's a Lockheed Hudson in the vicinity too. I've heard that it's at Canberra Airport in the Virgin Lounge or something. A restored Lockheed Hudson, which was a workhorse of the RAF and flew also in similar areas to the Kitty Hawk. Particularly used against Japanese Navy. A very perilous mission indeed, attacking the Japanese Navy. Those warships and so on bristling with anti-aircraft weaponry. And here's a view from the upper viewing deck of the Zero and the Kitty Hawk. And this is the real deal, folks. These are the real deal. They're not replicas. They are real combat planes. Many of them that have seen combat. Many of them that have either been shot down or have shot down others, or a combination of the two. And here's the tail wheel of the Mosquito. I'm pleased to report that this interesting looking tyre is made by Dunlop. And remember, this the Mosquito was by and large made of wood. There it looks like it's made of standard aluminium, doesn't it? But the whole thing really was different types of wood, plywood. And the manufacturer of the Mosquito, de Havilland, had a great deal of air racing and world speed record success with a pre-war or an interwar period aircraft with 2 engines and with a plywood construction that they built. The name escapes me now. Was it a Gull or Percival or something? De Havilland Percival? I don't know, but it had twin engines. It was much the same as a Mosquito. It was made of the same stuff. It had 2 engines and it was fast and it could fly a long distance, and it set a lot of speed records in the 30s. And I believe the Mosquito was an outgrowth of that plane. I think it was a de Havilland Percival or something. I don't know. Going by memory here, folks. There's the Mustang. No camo. Australian Government, US Army, P51D 20NT, serial number, and there's that Merlin engine. I assume it's a Merlin. Is it built by Rolls-Royce though, or is it built under license by Packard in America? Emergency something release. And there's your guns, 3 of them in each wing. I think they're 50s in each wing, so 3 50s in each. So 6 50 caliber machine guns, and you've got some rockets there too. I could be wrong, but I think this plane's decked out for fighting in Korea with those air-to-ground rockets, unguided. The Mustang, an extremely famous, well-regarded warbird. Same, the Mosquito, very highly regarded. Mosquito known for being fast, very fast. And it was to the genius and the know-how of de Havilland that company had retained the body of knowledge to build an aircraft out of all different types of wood, knowing which type of wood to use for the wing spar, which type of wood to use for the skin, and so on and so forth, to get the right combination of strength and lightness, which is always the challenge with aircraft, to get the structure strong enough and to get it light enough. The lighter it is, the faster it is, the less fuel it uses. But if it's too light, it's too flimsy, it'll break apart at those speeds or G-forces. There's an SC-5A, Royal Aircraft Factory SC-5A, a fast plane. I think it did 220 kilometres an hour from World War I. Roughly a 200 horsepower engine. That was a glimpse at a torpedo and a midget sub that attacked Sydney Harbour. And here's a, what did they say it was? I think it's a G6. I'll show you in a minute what the tablet says of it, the info plaque or whatever. But anyways, here it is. A real blast from the past. And there's the Avro Lancaster. This one's famous in Australia. It's called G for George. And I think it did 70 missions or something. It did a lot of missions. There was an infographic that they flashed on the wall at the end of the Lancaster presentation, and I didn't get to film it, it was too quick, but it said something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing, said that in the air war, like the Lancasters and that, dropping bombs on Germany at night time, 10,000 Australians flew and 3,000 Australians died. So that would indicate a 2/3 chance of survival. So that's a pretty bloody high attrition rate. Of course, it was even higher for the Luftwaffe. Eventually, they were exterminated, essentially. A few of them survived here and there, but that's why this here Messerschmitt Bf 109 G something G6 G4 is really, really special because it's so rare. This is the losing side's plane. The losing side was utterly pulverized and ground into dust. It's a G6, which you can fly in IL-2 Sturmovik with the Mark 108 30mm cannon firing through the propeller boss. A great plane. And it's rare these days to see one of these. And I really like seeing this plane. If there's any one plane that I go to the War Memorial to see, it's that there G6. And it strikes me how small it is and how compact it is and how streamlined it is. It's incredibly aerodynamically streamlined, which gives it such a high speed and striking by night. So all of the RAF operations with heavy bombers were at night time, contrasting with the United States Army Air Force, the 8th Air Force, which was based in England, bombing continental Europe and Germany. They always operated during the day. So you had the Americans operating their heavy bombers during the day. You had the RAF operating their heavy bombers during the night. and that wasn't any kind of coordination between the two forces. It was just the RAF preferred the strategy of operating at night. Obviously you're harder to shoot down at night, and the Americans preferred operating during the day. And I believe more or less, and particularly as the war went on, the Americans stopped painting camouflage on their B-17s and on their Mustangs, and they just flew them over Germany and Europe in plain aluminium, shiny, the opposite of camouflage, aluminium structure. These are interesting kind of symbols here. Obviously they're bombs, and they seem to have stick figures next to them and stuff, which means something to someone. Yeah, I was struck by how small the 109 is. I mean, it's not a midget, but it's not a huge big thing. Like, compare it to that Hawker Sea Fury. It's compact. It's got a Daimler-Benz engine. I think it's a DB603. Depending on what configuration you're in and what altitude you're in, I think it can produce about, at a maximum, about 1800 horsepower for a short period of time. I think its standard horsepower is something like 1400 horsepower. How fast does it fly? I think it'll do 650 kilometers an hour. And it's got these interesting red lines on the side of the cockpit canopy. I was trying to figure out what they were. I thought that they could have been defrosting heaters, so that the pilot could have a chance of looking out the left and the right window if the windows were fogging up. That's just a guess. And you can see it's got a serial number painted on the tail over the swastika. I think that might have been an Allied post-war addition. If I looked closely at these old Axis planes, this one and the 262 and the 163, they're covered in writing, faded writing that's been painted over, and then more stuff written on top of it, most of it in English. And it seems to me that throughout the decades, and probably particularly in the war, the few years just after World War II, like when they were learning to fly these planes, the Allies that is, they were probably painting stuff on them and writing stuff on them. You know, let the refuelers know what kind of fuel to put in it. You get up there and you write down, this plane uses 110 octane or something, you know, so they don't put the wrong fuel in it. So you can sort of see, like when you go into an old building, like if you look at the pyramids, there's writing on the pyramids from any period you care to mention it, be it 1960s or be it 1860s or before, when Napoleon was there, and whenever, the 1810s or something. Napoleon and his soldiers graffitied the pyramids, and then you got people in World War II graffitiing the pyramids. Those planes are a bit like that, but on a more compressed timeline. They've got a lot of detail on them that represents the huge expanse of decades that they've occupied as museum pieces and as non-operational post-war oddities. Changing pace, down here we've got a submarine, and that's the torpedo that goes in the submarine. It's a mini sub. It's Japanese. It got exploded. They dug it out of Sydney Harbour. And I'll come back to that later. So there's a World War I tank. And here's some paintings of some, I guess they're Australian aviators from World War I. World War I was there's the Red Baron. Australian soldiers carting him away. They gave him a funeral with full military honours. And there's an albatross. And apparently that albatross was shot down during an incident, and they've done a good job of restoring it, because does it look like it's been shot down to you? It doesn't, does it? So at some point along the way it was restored. And there in the background is a huge World War I bomber. What is it, a Vickers Vimy? Or something. Handley Page 0400. It's either a Vickers Vimy or a Handley Page, probably a Handley Page, in that giant projected photo. And what's that plane? I'm not actually sure what that is. And there's the SE-5A. I was really interested to see the subtle differences in aircraft construction techniques, as much as that can be viewed after all these eons of history of modification to these museum pieces throughout the years. But I mean, you look, for example, at the wheels on. You look at the wheels on the SE-5A, and they're kind of like a bicycle. They're spokes, and then covering over the spokes for the purpose of aerodynamics is a thin layer of canvas or leather or something, probably canvas. And then you look at the German planes, like here's one here. I think I'll zoom in on the wheel, and you can see they've got basically an identical technology there. So they say that the Albatross had weak wings, that the wings had come off in a dive. It's a pretty good plane, I think. I don't think it was that weak. It looks strong enough. It's got a nice inline engine there. I think it's a 6-cylinder inline, 180 horsepower thereabouts. And there's a curious object on the top there. Is that a pitot tube? Some kind of an instrumentation. And they've departed from the canvas of the rear fuselage at the front of the fuselage, where they've got either a metal engine nacelle, and then below that the plywood nacelle. And I think even the underbelly of the fuselage seems to be plywood. It's a nice plane. I was quite pleased to discover this bunch of aeronautical machine guns and hand-dropped bombs, I think. And I was trying to decide which machine gun was my favourite. There was one at the very top which I thought was, it looked the most user-friendly. That one's alright, but it looks a bit agricultural. That one in the centre there, what's that, a Maxim or a Lewis or something? Air-cooled Maxim maybe. And the one above that looks pretty mean, and then the one at the very top looks very refined indeed. What is that, a Lewis? I think they stuck one of those at the top wing of an SE-5A. So there's a good sampling there of World War I aeronautical machine guns, all of them air-cooled. And here's an Avro 504K. And that was the tail end of the SE-5A. SE-5A had massive exhaust pipes. I don't know why they made them so long. And the the Avro, this one here, the Avro 504K, was used as a trainer. Pretty docile, sort of like a Tiger Moth, only bigger and I guess probably less powerful. If the Tiger Moth was the trainer of the 30s and 40s, the 504K was the trainer of 1913 onwards, I guess. This is interesting. The caption said this was the German machine gun out of a German plane in Palestine that some Australians shot down in an aerial combat, and they retrieved the machine gun from the crashed Albatross. And you can see the machine gun's really beat up, even the barrel's bent and all sorts. And you can see the kind of, I think they call it turtle shell pattern on that plane there. I'm trying to remember what brand that plane was, that German one. Platz, maybe. Maybe it was a Platz. Or a Fowls. Platz or Fowls. So here we're inspecting the SC5A. And I'm trying to illustrate how long the exhaust pipes are. You can see, and they're on either side of the engine. They run a good measure down the fuselage there, past the pilot. Maybe that's why they were. There must have been a reason why they did that, more than just for fashion. There must have been a reason for it. It's a good plane, the SC5A. I'd fly any one of these planes. I'd even fly the 163, and you can see the spoke wheel that's covered in some paper thin leather or something. So they've fared in that spoked wheel. And I think that shows that they're starting to understand aerodynamics at this point. And there's the gun on one of the guns on top of the wing. Yeah, and there's that camouflage there. It's not really camo, is it? Alright, so this just about concludes our look at the World War I section. And there's a balloon, the gondola for a balloon, and I guess an observation balloon. And check out the wireless transmitter just there. I assume they had that in the balloon. And there's a giant bomb on the left of the balloon gondola there. Dropped by I don't know what, perhaps a Zeppelin. Wouldn't it be good if they had a Zeppelin in this museum? And here's the original and the best tank ever. Drive it in War Thunder today. One thing that struck me about this tank is that the deck, like the floor, is made of, it's quite civilized, it's made of floorboards, which I'll show you up close in a bit. So you've got your riveted steel hull, a bit like the hull of the Titanic or something, that kind of design construction. Here's the front of the tank. I believe it's the front. And it's got what looks like a port for a Lewis gun and two hatches for viewing. I don't think the armour's very thick. But, I mean, it's the world's first tank. It looks good. It looks like it could really cruise across a muddy landscape. And it's quite heavily armoured with these kind of turret appendages here. Mark IV tank, 1200 built. That's a lot of tanks. And there's one of these in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade if you want to see one in action. I always thought they were cannons, but looking at that it looks like it's a Lewis gun with a cooling jacket fitted over the top of it. And I tried to get a look at the top of the tank here to see what's on top. Inconclusive, I'd say. And here's the interior. It looks better than I thought. Like it's all painted white, and the floor has floorboards. So I thought they would have been standing on a hot steel floor, waiting to hit a landmine or something. But no, it's floorboards. The only trouble is you've got the engine right next to you. You're not separated from the engine. And here's another tank, a World War II tank. Probably 1935 vintage and then used in World War II. And I'm hazarding a guess here, probably used in Manchuria and China prior to the kick-off of World War II, if that makes sense. It's a Japanese tank anyways. And here's an interesting display. I thought that Bren gun on the right there was a Bren gun, but on closer inspection it's not a Bren, it just looks like one, and it's not even Allied, it's Japanese. And there's a Japanese munition that goes in that there hand-operated mortar. Nasty bit of kit. And there's that pseudo Bren there. And check out the cooling fluting on that machine gun barrel. And check out that Navy insignia. And check out these Crocs here with the split toe and all. If that's not straight out of a ninja movie, I don't know what is. And on the left there, you've got a boy's anti-tank rifle and a Australian something on the Japanese. I guess it's a captured Japanese flag to do with the Milne Bay, and the Australians carrying a Thompson submachine gun, 45 caliber drum magazine, and he's wearing a more standard footwear. Those ninja shoes blow me away that the Japanese back then had that kind of shoe. That was, I mean, it's in keeping with the Japanese aesthetic. You know, it's how they do things from the days of the samurai right up until today. They have these kind of things which are impressive. Here's some artwork. The war in these parts, like anywhere, had its challenges. Particularly, you didn't want to get captured by the Japanese. If they captured you, it wouldn't be good for you. They weren't signatories to the Geneva Convention. I've heard horrible stories about people in, like, allies in Japanese prison camps. The Japanese would just do unspeakable crimes, and I don't think this is propaganda. I think it's legit. They'd do things like they'd hammer a stake into your ear and burst your eardrum. A hammer and a mallet. Bang, bang. No more eardrum. Or they'd kick you in the balls repeatedly until your balls blew up to the size of a soccer ball. This is all if you got captured by the Japanese. So essentially you didn't want to get captured. You did not want to get captured. And that's the torture and the brutality. And then there's all of the tropical diseases. Malaria, dysentery, various fungal and parasitic infections, cholera, typhoid, typhus, snakes, spiders, everything that gets carried by mosquitoes, dengue fever. That's a 88mm anti-aircraft cannon, by the way, the famous 88, a German gun. But I digress. Yeah, you didn't want to get captured by the Japanese in World War II. Germans, yeah, not too bad. So, as well as the torture and as well as the tropical diseases and insects and venomous creatures, there was often not enough food to eat in the prison camp. So it was really just a trifecta of shittiness. You really wanted to avoid that sort of thing if at all possible. So here's the Lancaster from a different angle. You got 4 engines. I'm 99% certain, I mean I'm assuming it all, but I'm pretty sure those are Merlin engines. And there's the navigator's dome, and there's the navigator peering down at us. They've done it really well how they've got the mannequin in there and got a pretty large bomb under the hold. What mass is it? Probably, I don't know, probably 2,000 kilo or something, which is a light one. These would carry a Grand Slam which weighed 8,000 kilos or something, and they could do it because the bomb bay in these Lancasters was flexible enough to carry all sorts of different ordnance, from a bunch of smaller bombs right up to the Grand Slams, which are the ones that they use to break dam walls. And there's a lot of physics that went into that. It's not just a massive explosive, it's a bomb that'd go through the water at great speed, dig deep into the mud, detonate in the mud under the dam, and cause hairline fractures in the dam, which the water pressure would then knock the dam over. Very smart how they did it. And in addition to the Grand Slam, there was the spherical bomb, the bouncing bomb, which they also used as a different method to destroy dams, a la the dam busters. There were some invalids, missing limbs, playing golf and archery. So there was a lot going on back then. If you're a young man back then and you wanted adventure, you were born at the right time. There'd be some kind of adventure for you. And all this noise that you're hearing now is the start of the presentation on G for George, the Lancaster. So I might just tune out here for about 5 minutes and let you watch the presentation. Cheers.
In 1943, a massive aerial bombing campaign attempted to destroy Germany's industry and its will to fight. The losses of aircraft and crew were almost unsustainable. In the evening of 16th of December 1943, Lancaster G for George, crewed mainly by Australians, was one of 500 bombers heading for Berlin. For the 73rd time, George had returned safely from an operation. But as crews finished their early morning debriefings, it was obvious that the cost had been very high. Over 50 bombers were lost. This night became known as Black Thursday.
My memories are of young men, Aussie men, laughing, dancing, singing, and enjoying the moment. Never to be heard of again. Shot down, killed in action. They were young, handsome, and full of life.
Alright, that pretty much concludes that presentation that they put on there. What was that statistic? 3,488 killed. That's Australians in Bomber Command in World War II. And the statistic they flashed on the screen that I saw, but I didn't capture on camera because the zoom wasn't quick enough, was 10,000 participated. So we had 10,000 airmen. That includes gunners, navigators, etc. Men in the air, in the Lancasters, Bomber Command and so on. 10,000 and then 3,488 killed. That's almost 40%. So the attrition was intense. And that was that presentation. And now I've discovered the ME-262 and the 163 tucked away in the corner without the lights on. But I found them. And there's those jet engines. What are they? 004 or something, BMW 004, or are they Jumo 004? I'm quite sketchy on the whole thing. In any case, I reckon this one was supposed to have, and you can see all the writing, all the layers of paint. There's something written there, then there's something else written there. There's various different stages of decrepitness of the markings on the fuselage and the structure. This is a really old, neglected plane. It's been sitting around since 1944 doing nothing, except every now and then it looks like they've, I don't know, it's got some history to it, that's for sure. I mean, how original is it? What was its original colour? Are you looking at the original colour of the plane? That red tip there, was that always there? Are you looking at the original paint? Not just the colour, but the paint. It's one thing to paint a plane in its original colour with brand new paint from the current year. But that paint that we're looking at there, is that actually 1944 paint? Look at the writing there, Turbo Lube Oil. That's English. So obviously that's added at some point, probably by the Allies, as an indicator to the ground crew what kind of oil the plane required, and so on and so on. And there's the 163. Standing next to the 163, I was struck by how user-friendly it looked. And I'm not being facetious. It really looked like something that was very easy to use. I don't know why I thought that, but when I was standing in front of it up close, in person, it looked pretty good. You can see it's got the T and the C there, T-Stoff and C-Stoff. You chuck the T-Stoff in that port, and you chuck the C-Stoff at the back there, and you never let them contact, otherwise kaboom. The pilot sits in there. It's got a small access window in that Perspex canopy. He sits behind a armoured plate glass internal windscreen under the canopy, framed in steel. You've got a propeller there that spins in the relative airflow and creates electricity with an internal generator that powers the electrical systems of the aircraft. You got two Mark 108 30mm cannons inboard of the wing root. You've got a kind of a dolly undercarriage that detaches once the plane's in the air, and you land on skids. Looks like you've got a radio aerial on the dorsal fin area. And I was also struck by how thick and how long the wings are. The wings are, the wings are quite thick. They're definitely not supersonic wings. Even in this video, it doesn't really do it justice. And the wings are longer than one might expect of a rocket plane. So from that I concluded it'd be a pretty good dogfighter. Be pretty manoeuvrable with all that lift it's generating. And it has a square kind of a tail, more like what you'd find on a HE-177, that same kind of tail. Changing focus for a sec here, you can see that the access door on the Lancaster there. It's a small door, about 4.5 feet tall, I think. First aid kit, and I think a dinghy or something. And there's the different ordnance. That cylindrical one that's sitting under there. They don't even bother to put fins on it. It's just a giant, big ass bomb. Probably weighs, what would it weigh? 3 tons, maybe 4 tons. Well, that's a relatively small one. As I say, I believe they had 8-ton bombs that they dropped with the Lancaster. Or even more, maybe 10 tons. How many tons was a Grand Slam? It was something like 8 or 10 tons, I'm sure. Here's a profile view of the 163. Speaking of profile views of the 163, I'm intending to make a profile artwork for my garments of pretty much all of the planes that you've seen in this museum, particularly the Lancaster, the 2 Messerschmitts that you see right now, and maybe some of the World War I planes. Also looking at doing that Zero and that Kitty Hawk in those liveries that you've seen today. Imagine wearing a hoodie with a Mitsubishi Zero on it. Be quite good, wouldn't it? Well, stay tuned to the Froggy Frog 9000 channel and froggyfrog9000.com, and you too can have a Mitsubishi Zero A6M t-shirt, long sleeve t-shirt, sweatshirt, hoodie, jumper, in the more or less the colour of your choice and the size of your choice, provided that your postal address is in the United States. If it's not, if you're in Timbuktu and you want to get one of those garments, you can sign up to a US-based resender company, and you can specify to them which garment you want. They can buy it for you, have it shipped to their facility, their warehouse, and then resend it to your country. I've never done it before, but I was going to buy some skis one year from America because they are much better and cheaper than what I could get here. And I was going to use a resender to buy skis from America and have them sent to Australia on Amazon, through a retailer on Amazon that was only shipping within the United States. So those resending companies are one way around that hiccup, that logistical difficulty. Here's my attempt to look inside the cockpit of the 163. I thought Bismarck's every one of Bismarck's videos where he goes to an air museum or the tank museum are really good, and his last one that he did yesterday was fantastic, where he and his cameraman climbed into a Halifax at a British museum and did a full in-depth review of the I guess the internal everything to do with inside the Halifax. Really interesting. I wish I could do the same thing with these kinds of planes, particularly the Messerschmitts here. I'd really like to have a look inside the cockpit of the 163, but it's not available. And unfortunately, oftentimes you look in the cockpit of one of these, and you find it's got a mop and a bucket in there or something, like they've just used it to store cleaning products and things like that. Not necessarily at this museum, but in general, the internal areas of aircraft in museums are often not ready to be presented to the public, whereas that one that Bismarck looked at definitely was in excellent, like 10 out of 10 condition, internally as well as externally. Here's the Luftwaffe night fighter pilots' badges, and there's one of their uniforms. I apologise, the lighting and the audio is a bit average, but there's a night fighter pilot's uniform, and one of those Luftwaffe badges said 200 on it, which doesn't mean 200 missions, it means 200 kills at night. Can you imagine that? We're talking planes like Lancasters. And here's the G6, looking at it from the belly angle. Again, look how dark it is. The lighting is subpar. But anyways. So yeah, you're wondering what a Messerschmitt Bf-109 G6 looks like in real life, albeit almost 100 years after the conflict. Well, this is it. You can see it has a very streamlined, very compact appearance. It's all business. We're at the end of the video more or less, and here's the back end of the MiG-15, and this is the engine. It's a jet engine, and I was really surprised that that air intake doesn't flow clean laminar flow air straight through to a Hungary engine. It's got all these wires and tubes and crap in front of the engine, and then the engine's got a mesh covering over its air intake zone. This was really surprising to me. I've seen this in remote control aircraft, where they stick an internal jet engine in a remote control aircraft, and they have the servo motors and the wires and that in front of the air intake inside the aircraft, way back from the air intake on the external part of the aircraft. Look at that. I mean, you've got pretty close to supersonic airflow. It must be choking in that paraphernalia section there and then compressing into the engine. That was a revelation to me that they're doing it that way. And here's the front of the air intake. So that was a surprise. And you can't see it because it's too freaking dark, but there's a cannon down there. I guess you'll just have to trust me, but yeah, there's a cannon there. That concludes the video. I want to thank you for making it, if you did make it this far. Thanks for joining me on this Sunday. I want to encourage you to visit my website, froggyfrog9000.com. That's froggyfrog9000.com. Have a look at the videos and stuff there, and in particular have a look at the t-shirts, see if there's one there that you would like, the aircraft and the colour and the size and the type of garment, be it a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, a long sleeve t-shirt, a sweater, jumper or a hoodie, and consider purchasing one of those t-shirts. You support my artwork, you support my channel, you promote me to do further aviation related things. This channel is just the beginning. With your support, no joke, we can fly an aircraft of my design from New South Wales to Antarctica and back again without refueling. So I guess what I'm saying there is that this channel is not at its zenith. This is only the beginning, and we can take things much faster, higher, stronger with your support. So thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, donate, buy t-shirts, visit froggyfrog9000.com. Keep on watching videos throughout the week. There'll be one every single day, and I'll see you next Sunday. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.